fact that I've been here for 27 years living in the UAE, and for me it's been such a pleasant and wonderful experience. So I'm now on a mission to discover other people's experiences on how they have made the UAE their home. Today's episode, I'm here to meet Abdul Salam Basis, hailing from the UK and having a wide experience in the real estate sector, specifically in the UAE, being here for around 25 plus years. This will be an episode where he sees and discusses how the real estate has changed over all of these years. So I guess we can start, as we always do. Tell us a bit about who is Abdul Salam.
عبد السلام بسيس وعبد السلام إسماعيل مبروك عبد السلام عمر علي بسيس. That's the full,
Okay.
including the whole tribe. I'm originally from Libya, Tripoli, Libya, and I had travelled from Libya as a child to the UK.
Okay.
And have been in the UK for years. So I had my primary school and secondary school and college and uni all in the UK. I'm the only son, but not spoiled. I have 3 sisters, and my parents, may Allah preserve them, inshallah. And we were always, as a family, into import and export and the hotel business in the UK.
Okay.
And that's what's kicked me off into the industry that I'm in now.
Okay, so that was basically, so your family from the hotel business. So that's, I can see the connection, as we're probably going to talk about, because obviously the UAE as a whole is, definitely a place that has lots of hotels. Yes. Some of the best hotels, actually. Yes. Surprisingly, a bit off the topic, but I've been on many travels around Europe, and I've always noticed that when you go in certain European hotels that say they're 4-star, they feel like a 2-star, because the 4 stars you get in Sharjah, the UAE, Dubai, etc., literally are like a 6-star in many other places. So that's something that you definitely stand out.
Definitely.
Now, so that was your childhood, or the first stages of your life. When exactly did you make the move to come over to Sharjah, and why?
It's a good question. We've heard about Abu Dhabi. My uncle was the consul general for the Libyan consulate here for years in the 80s. So he used to talk about Abu Dhabi, used to talk about Sharjah, he used to come here by the beach at the weekend. And we always assumed there was a whole country, like there's a country called Abu Dhabi, there's a country called Dubai. We didn't know anything about the Emirates. As you know, in the UK, there's not much information at that time about this part of the region. They just call it the Middle East and that's it. You knew Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, that's about it. So then people started talking about the up-and-coming Emirates, the development that was going on. And at that time, obviously, I started to practice my religion a lot more. So it was attractive to me to travel to the Arab world and to see the Muslim world, because I traveled all over Europe, America, but I wanted to see something a bit different. So people suggested, look, if you go to Sharjah, they're amazing people. It's an amazing place to see, and it's still up and coming. And it's the old school of Arabia, if you like. And that's what attracted us. So we came here first in 1996 with my parents and my sister at the time, and we came, and it was an amazing, amazing experience.
So I guess apart from the fact that you said there was a lot of information, but what were your expectations before arriving here? And then I guess the follow-on from that be, what were your expectations, and then what were your first impressions?
Expectations, there wasn't much information at that time as far as tourism is concerned in this region. You knew about the market, which looked like a train. You knew about the ports and the old souks and the gold souk in Dubai, these sort of thing. So for us, it was just like an adventure. We're going to go there. Everybody speaks very highly of it. But there wasn't much advertised what to expect. You had no expectations whatsoever. But as you rightly said, as soon as we landed and we went into a normal hotel, it was amazing compared to what we used to in the UK. The space of the rooms, and then not only that, the friendliness of the people. Wherever you went, you really felt welcome. And it's just it was an amazing eye-opener for us. Coming in, looking at how there was traditional and there was ultra-modern, things that even in the UK we don't have. As you know, in the UK, if you wanted to develop a property, you have to go through this and you have to go through that, and historically you have to keep the same look and so on. Whereas here, if you wanted to do a big glass bowl for a house, you can do, and it was just so exciting.
Now, I guess, what are the places here in Sharjah specifically? I'm sure you'll have a lot of detail here when it comes to this because there's so many places. But I mean, what are the kind of places in Sharjah that really stand out to you or that you've enjoyed? Because of course, when you came here, for many years you were based in Sharjah, weren't you?
Yes.
So you definitely would have had some favourite places or some places that stand out to you that you used to spend some time going to with yourself, your family.
Well, obviously the Corniche, the Buhaira, it was up and coming, and now it's just amazing. Every time I look at it, it just changes. You had the old markets, the old ports with the old ships and the products coming in from outside, and it was just amazing to watch people loading all this product coming in and doing business right there and there on the port. And it was quite a trade hub. Going onto the old streets, it just reminded me of my childhood in Libya, how things were still old school, but at the same time you had the new malls coming in and the high-rise buildings, and each one looked different to the next. And then we were also surprised at how large Sharjah was and how far it extends. So if you wanted desert, you can go in the middle of the desert, be away from it all. If you wanted modern, you had. If you wanted the traditional, you had. And there's a lot of history, a lot of history.
I mean, you talk about the desert. I mean, now we've seen, which I guess to some extent is real estate and some extent is tourist sites, but you have so many, you have places like Malayha now where you can go and explore the parks and the desert trips, and they even have these things like the fossil rock where you can take a four-wheel drive up there. And then, of course, going towards, which I'm sure you've probably spent some time there as well, going towards the mountainside where you can have mountains and the sea. You have places like Khurfakan, of course.
Khurfakan, amazing. I was there recently again with the new tunnel, the water dam and the development there. I wasn't even expecting that. But Khurfakan was an amazing place. We used to go there at the weekends, get away from it all. And you'd have nearly two different climates, two different atmospheres and two different experiences. But even then, it's part of Sharjah. So you go through Dibba, etc. And that drive was just amazing.
And of course, that drive itself, you would have, from doing that drive when you first came, which I imagine you would have done in the first few years, and to now, even that, which is the whole idea of this show, is we're showing how things have changed. I mean, you just mentioned the fact now that that journey would have taken before would have been a lot longer, a big way around. Now we have, like you mentioned, they've made these very modern tunnels that go right through the mountain, like you see in many other countries. So the whole, even that road journey that you would have taken in the past and now has changed, substantially in a big way.
Yes, definitely. I remember driving a particular road. It was quite rough because of the number of trucks that used to drive in and out, carrying rocks and aggregate and all sorts of things. You used to have to stay behind the trucks, and it was always single track, and to overtake was a trick. Recently when I went, it was a completely new road, a lot quicker, smoother, and didn't see a truck in sight. So it's a big change, definitely, non-stop.
Now I guess a question we like to always ask, usually we find that nobody has any of these kind of challenges because it's almost like Sharjah in general is a melting pot where everyone can fit in. But we always ask, did you find any cultural challenges, being the fact that you spent most of your life, obviously, from a young child in the UK? Did you find any cultural challenges when you arrived here and started, living in society here?
I wouldn't say challenges. I would say there are obviously differences in how things are done. As I say, there's certain parts of it was very old school where we're used to a certain methodology. You have to look at the cultural side of things as well. Like, for example, we used to get invites left, right, and center for people. You have to come and eat with me. In the UK, you will just see it as just, yeah, okay, fine, thank you very much, maybe another time. It was here taken seriously. I invited you, don't turn me down. I want to show the Arab hospitality. So that was one of the things that was positive. And it's a melting pot. I mean, we had people from all over the world that we were coming across. And we could tell that the local The locals are actually a minority, but a very welcoming minority and a definite presence. But you could go into a shop and there'll be Iranian people in there, or go to somewhere else, could be Filipino, Indian, all sorts. So it was a real melting point of cultures and ideas and people, which was really, really positive.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because we had many guests on the show, other guests who said the same thing, that they felt that there was a lot of hospitality. I think one of our guests mentioned that he'd one time broken down in the desert going like a four-wheel drive, and someone had helped him get his car out and then insisted he comes back to his house.
Yes.
For a meal. It turned out to be a very high-ranking government official, and he was so surprised that not only was it a high-ranking government official who invited me to his house, but he doesn't even know me, whereas you said in many other cultures and traditions, this wouldn't happen. It's unheard of.
I had the same thing. I had a hire car, and unfortunately it broke down, and a guy from nowhere just turned up. He said, "Come on, I'll take you. We'll go to the hire place and we'll get them to sort out." And of course we expose ourselves to the Habibi thing, where you go to the hire place to complain about the car that had broken down, and then straight away they smile, "Habibi, I'm sorry, it's okay, I'll get something for you, have something to drink." It was easy going. It wasn't so rigid like we have in the UK, where you would form a complaint and blah, 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 blah. It was all dealt with. And we were also helped out once by an off-duty police officer. We got stuck in the sand, thinking that we could just drive through. We didn't realize you need a lot of skill for that. And he came across and he said, "Look, I'm going to pull you out." He pulled me out, insisted I invited me around for some food in his house. And in the UK, you're not used to cops bailing you out and then inviting you around for dinner. So it was an eye opener.
Interesting. Now, so obviously we want to talk a bit now in a bit of depth about how you've seen real estate in Sharjah, in the UAE in general, change. This is your field. You've been working in it. As you mentioned, you came here about 26 years ago for the first time.
Yep.
And you've been based here for quite some time. So you would have seen a big change within the real estate market within Sharjah and the UAE. So how have you seen that change over the time? Because I know I came here in '94.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, even then, there was still, a lot of, as a Westerner, you would still be impressed with some of the skylines that you'd see. Even in Sharjah, to be honest, there was still some, very built up, very modern, very nice looking things that made you think like, wow. And that was back in 1994. We've seen, and I'm sure you're the person to speak about that, but we've seen such a vast expansion all over Sharjah and the UAE in general when it comes to real estate. So how have you seen that change?
I mean, besides real estate, it's more than that. It seems that the UAE, Sharjah obviously being such a huge emirate, there is constant development in all sectors. I mean, the last thing I was looking at is this high-speed capsule that they are already looking into to transport people. So I mean, there's no limits in that. Okay, we're traditional, but at the same time, we want to be number one in the world in being so advanced. And you have this capsule which can travel at 120 kilometers around the city, and it can go up to 500 kilometers per hour, carrying people. And
is that the one that's hanging?
Yes.
Funny enough, one of our last episodes was with one of the directors from the Sharjah Research and Technology Innovation Park, which has that there on their premises.
And that's what we're finding. We're finding people who have ideas, who maybe in Europe or other countries may not get the budget to put their ideas into, or they might think, imagine doing this in London, people will think about health and safety, they'll think about how will it look on the road, and it'll just be so much red tape. Whereas here is, well, this is something moving people into the modern era of travel, looking at different ways of travel, in the same way as in real estate, in the same way as doing business. Look at the smart, I mean, you got the Emirates, you can issue your title deeds, we're talking about real estate, as you sit. In the UK, you have to apply, and it could take up to 4 months to get that. So they're always looking at ways of improving, and they're always listening to what more can we do. So it doesn't stop. It's not just about high-rise building that we see in the skyline. It's also the method of construction, the use of solar power to try and help making places as green as possible. How can we modernize the traffic system? Because this is another issue. When Sharjah was being developed, the speed of development is a lot quicker than actual city planning. So you had issues with traffic and parking and so on, because of the speed that people moving into Sharjah and developing, the infrastructure really needed to be restructured. And this is what we see now, where you have the university city and all the surrounding areas. I remember when the university was done, it was absolutely spectacular. It looked like many, many different Buckingham Palaces all over the place. It's just an amazing place. And people thought, why is it so far away and why is it here? Now they realized there was a plan way ahead that all around there we're going to have the university city. We're going to have accommodation. There's areas where they're going to move the car showrooms and dealerships and so on, which is already in place, to move the industrial area a bit further out in somewhere which is specialized, not just makeshift garages and so on to clean up what we have. So there's constant development and progress when it comes to Sharjah and Dubai and all these countries, Emirates. So that keeps it exciting. And it's not just the real estate, as I say, it's in any business. I have people who set up factories here simply because they're able to expand and they're able to be in touch with the melting pot of investors from all over the world. I mean, I've done real estate in London, central London, for years. And we used to get across, come across a lot of people, obviously, from the known countries. But only in the Emirates do you get people from South America, from countries you never even heard of, coming over. That shows you how much interest the Emirates actually attracts. And it's that constant excitement of development.
Obviously now as well, going back to real estate, I've seen, maybe you can elaborate more, but I've seen projects popping up all over the place now. You have, of course, we recently have the very big city centre that's been opened. I believe it's called Zahia.
Yep.
In Sharjah. And then behind that you have a whole, that itself is a massive mall. And a lot of people say, you don't need to go to, for example, the city centre in Dubai anymore. You can go there because it gives you everything you need. And right behind there you have a very nice modern community, which I'm sure you'll be more, maybe you can fill in the details there. But there's a lot of these projects that are like Al Zahia and that are popping up that are really like modern real estate projects.
And that shows you that most of these retail companies and retail shops and outlets and so on will always take whatever city centre you throw at it. I remember certain malls, we used to think this was a huge mall. It's nothing now. And they're building bigger and better each time, and they're still filling up those shops. So people who maybe are struggling somewhere else doing business because of their economy, which is all linked to interest rates and taxations and what have you, here you could just do business with everybody. And this is what attracts a lot of people. You name the brand, it's here now. I remember in 1996, there's a lot of brands that I wanted to attract over to the Emirates that weren't here in no time at all. They all set up shop. You name it, it's here. If it's not here, it's not worth knowing about. So when you get these city centres, and these city centres are designed so that they will cover the area, surrounding areas, and other areas will have the same thing. So you don't need to say, like in the UK, I'm going to go to the city centre. That means in the centre of the town. And then traffic rolling in and traffic rolling out.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's a better design in that there's a city centre here and here and here and here and here to serve the communities around them. So you don't need to all be clumped up in one area.
Another thing we've obviously seen as well that's over time is there's been so many new additions to the of course, when it comes to the government buildings, like you said, so many of them are amazing architecture that to us, this is a court, or this is amazing. Like you said, they look like palaces, very
Yes.
eye-catching.
Yes.
To the extent that I've even seen tourists coming to take pictures of the government buildings and thinking this is some special palace, and
yes.
this is the department for such and such. So the beautiful buildings we have there, and obviously, but we've seen some very unique projects that have come up that have like the heritage areas have been rebuilt. Obviously,
Yes.
if I remember you saying earlier, when you first came, you stayed very close to the heritage area.
Yes.
So you must have also seen how maybe you could talk a bit about how your heritage was then and how it is now, because they've done a big expansion in bringing back. And bringing back from scratch in some aspects some of those heritage places.
Definitely, we did notice the older buildings, but because at that time the newer buildings were coming up, people were paying more attention to the newer buildings. Whereas now what we're seeing is they're really highlighting the heritage buildings, the historical buildings. They're putting spotlights on them. They're refurbishing these buildings to savor. Because people assume, because of all this new construction and new development, oh, it's a new country. No, there is a history. It's a long history. And it's good that they are paying a lot of attention in developing this and preserving this and really highlighting it, because that's what a lot of the foreign travelers want to see. They are amazed by the malls and the centers and the amazing highways and high-rise buildings, but also people want a bit of culture, a bit of history, and this is what's happening in Sharjah.
Also, something that comes to mind is the fact that they've done amazing places. We had an episode there, like I don't know if you've been there, but like the An-Noor Island. They have an island which has an amazing architectural structure where they have a butterfly house, and it's a very nice island. There's so many things, so many projects coming up. And you mentioned earlier Khurfakan, and just the fact that recently they've had like they've built like a, on the side of the road within the rocks, they've built a waterfall that just continuously comes down.
Yes, and I also heard that they're going to do like an Italian style, that's right, yeah, construction in, which is amazing.
Funny enough, we had a guest a few episodes back who was in charge of that, and that itself is because at the end of the day it's real estate, because that project, as far as I understood, will be partly possibly residential, as well as an element of restaurants, social aspect to it. So that's just amazing. That's just an example of how, from the day when I arrived and the day you arrived, how Sharjah really has advanced. And of course, something that's also amazing, I don't know if you're aware of, is behind that waterfall is actually a restaurant. So you can go inside the restaurant, which has a very, you could say, cavey, rocky feeling to it.
Inside, behind the
and
waterfall.
your window
like
is
Italy.
actually the waterfall coming down.
Right.
So that's something, as well as probably, you're probably aware of this, of course, maybe like a few months back, they opened the Roman outdoor, like theatre style, Colosseum style theatre, where they aired that the famous movie about the history of Khurfakan and the Portuguese and what have you. So there's many things that have been built there. Now, have you seen, going back to the real estate, have you seen a lot of, obviously, I mean, we know that's a fact, but maybe you could put a bit of, highlight it. How much have you seen the investment? Because as you mentioned, when you first came here, you started off your own like real estate company.
Yes.
So you obviously seen over the years, how has Sharjah and the UAE in general advanced in real estate, and how has the investment been? Has it been really slowly climbing, or has it been so much of people from outside investing in the UAE and the real estate market?
Believe it or not, I mean, as we know, the world is going through a pandemic at the moment, and a lot of economies are struggling. And historically, if you look at study, whenever there was a pandemic, there'll be people who are taking more risks. Something about people are thinking, life is short, I've got money, I'm going to invest, I'm going to take advantage. And they're doing it here big time in the UAE, in the whole of UAE.
So you're saying that since the pandemic kicked in, you've seen more people investing from outside?
Growth.
Wow.
The prices are doing this. People would inquire about, what is a good deal? Now they just want to buy. They don't even ask for a good deal, whatever. And we're talking about people who will ask for whole buildings, whole hotels struggling in Europe and other places. Not here. So people are looking for whole buildings. So in fact, we're seeing a huge growth in the past year in the real estate market all over the Emirates.
I'd actually heard as well, like you said, all over the Emirates, Sharjah, Dubai, everywhere. I believe it was recently on the probably on Dubai Eye Business Breakfast or something, that they are saying that not only, which you just reminded me when you said that, not only has there been an increase, they're finding that many billionaires are coming, and that when you say to them, we have a villa for 8 million, they're saying,
that's nothing.
That's not enough. I want
nothing. Yeah.
People, like you said, people are buying buildings, and this is something maybe you cannot compare to worldwide. Most people are not wanting to invest. So it's really interesting that in such a pandemic, you've seen to some extent some kind of increase, especially in high-end, market.
Well, that's the biggest growth that we had. First of all, is the high-end villas of 30 million, 50 million, 100 million, 90 million, 150 million. Whereas before, people will think, over 8 million, 20 million. That. No longer. And one of my clients, in fact, what attracted him to come over to Dubai, he says, look, I've got a diamond Rolex. I have a top-down Rolls Royce. Where I'm from, I could not even imagine driving with my watch on show and the roof down in certain parts or most parts. Certainly I could not park it with the hood down and go in for a bite to eat, but I can in the Emirates. This is why it attracts people.
That's interesting. That's something we've constantly had on every single episode. One of the questions I always ask, which I guess I can pose to you, but you've probably already answered it to some extent, is like, what made you stay here apart from work?
Friendliness, security and safety. It's an organized country. It's not tomorrow this, next day that. There is a system in place. There's law and order, and you know where you stand. What more do you want from that? And at the same time, you can prosper. Whatever business you do, you're open to the world. People will do business with you here. So for me, it ticks every single box there is. Even with the hot summers, that's fine. There's ACs around, there's beautiful malls around. We can overlook that because we have the best winters here in the UAE as well. So
I had a last guest who said, he was based originally from Canada, so he was saying, I'll take the 50, then the minus 50 any day of the week.
That's exactly. At least it's not miserable. At least at 4 o'clock in the evening, it doesn't go dark and you have to go home because it's wet and miserable. The sun is always shining. We do have nice winters here. People don't understand. We do have some cold weathers here as well. And you can go into the desert. We even camp out in the desert when it's winter, around a fire camp, and it feels amazing. So it ticks all the boxes. This is what the UAE.
And you mentioned that, about the season, the fact that also, that it is sometimes even for tourism, even for Sharjah, the places we mentioned are very popular in the winter, to the extent that if you don't go at the right time, you're going to be in traffic jams for hours. Go into places like Khurfakkan, because as we know, that region, when it does rain, the wadis, the valleys fill up and become like flowing rivers.
Yes.
So it's so popular to go down there at those times. So in any season, they're very popular.
I've taken video clips of that as well, and when I share it on my social media outlets, people ask me, "Oh, where is this?" When I tell them this is the UAE, actually, this is in Sharjah.
It rains there?
Really? But I thought it's just a desert.
Not only does it rain, sometimes it even has hailstones.
Exactly.
As well.
Yes. No, it's an amazing place to be, and we can only see growth. That's all, because we have everything that we need, and we've enjoyed every single one of these years. My parents are also here. They've retired here. And I remember my father said to me, look, in the UK, the winter, which is most of the year, when it's 4, I can't go out in the dark with your mum and just go for a walk. Here at like 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock at night, we can go for a coffee somewhere.
It's true.
The malls are open.
The whole idea of feeling unsafe is, it is non-existent here.
Yeah, big time. They're not worried about their cars, they're not worried about anybody breaking in or anybody even troubling them in the street as they walk in. Imagine old people walking in the street at night. You can do it here. And so they have more hours in the day that they can enjoy in their life. And this is what they retired for. They retired to enjoy their time. And hence why the attraction of people coming from all ages coming over to the UAE.
Yes. And that's, I guess, one of the finishing points is that that's an interesting fact that most people, when they go abroad to work, they make their money, they do what they wanted to do, they go back home. Where we find many people who come here, they want to stay, retire at this, they want this to be their retirement place, not to go back where they came from.
Yes.
So many people.
Not to end up on a home somewhere on their own or in a flat with no visitors. Because it's friendly here and inviting. My parents have made many new friends. Wherever they go, they get invited over because it's that Arabic hospitality. Whereas if you're in the UK, you'll be lucky to get a cup of tea if you're visiting somebody, and maybe if you're really lucky, a biscuit with it.
Well, Abdul, it's been great having you on the show. And
thanks for having me.
Thank you for sharing your experiences over all these years about Sharjah.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.